Healing and manifesting in the hut is about the four realms that make up our daily lives: spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental. And for these videos, I like to categorize the main theme of the talk, of the information. And sometimes it's hard to identify which realm today's story is really about. But I think I would pick the spiritual realm, because the spiritual realm has an element of not just energy to it, but it's pointing us in a direction that needs our attention, or in a direction that's for our positive growth. I truly believe it's a happy energy that likes to point the way. So the other day, a group of business ladies and I met at a local coffee shop for our Feminine Frequency Business Collab meeting. And it was really interesting because as we were meeting and we started to talk, we had somebody dropped in from the outside environment to get their drink, and they said hello. And so they kind of introduced them. They knew some people at the table, and one person they didn't know, but they were introduced to that person. And all of a sudden a connection was made regarding that person's business, of a future possibility of something that might pan out in the future. And after that happened and the person left and went to get their coffee and we carried on with our meeting, I couldn't help but notice and talk about, I said, did you notice that just happened? Did you notice, like, it's a feeling of like synchronicity with timing, of that the timing of that event, that person would walk in right there, right then, and see us all sitting at the table and make a connection with another group member. And I'm like, did everyone just notice what just happened? Because it really feels like, to me, it feels like water flowing, or like an electric current making a connection with something, and it's joyful. And that person that had made the connection was like, she looked lit up with the idea of a way to connect with that person in the future regarding her own business. Then somebody else walked by and recognized somebody else at the table as they were going to get their coffee. It's funny because it's making me think we need a more private space to meet so that we're not distracted by all this. But even still, the spiritual side to our lives kind of stirs up this energy and brings good things. And so somebody else dropped by and said to somebody else at the table as they walked by to get their coffee, they said a comment to them. And it was just a joking comment for sure, teasing a little bit, and then they went on their way. And I said to my friend, a fellow business owner, I said, how did that make you feel though? We know he was just joking, but that also dropped in and presented itself energetically to us at the table. So we had a really good discussion about, even though they didn't mean any harm, it's still a good practice to name our emotions in how that landed for us. So with those two examples, one, I would describe it as one positive synchronistic energetic thing happened, and another one that's positive down the road happened, but in the moment is asking us to address those heavy, sticky emotions, and actually maybe face something that it's otherwise present and we're not paying attention to it. And my whole thing with the spiritual realm is either example, the one that brought instant joy and the one that brought introspection, they're all for our higher good and for our greater purpose. The best part about both instances is just noticing. We actually don't even have to work that hard with the spiritual happenings around us in the spiritual realm. 80% of our work is to simply notice and possibly name what emotion is presenting to us through that synchronicity or that synchronistic event that's happening. I Just had to check my notes. The other part to all this spiritual realm and synchronicities happening is that what if, that saying, they're not happening to us, they're happening for us. What if we are actually conjuring them up? We would be doing it subconsciously. But what if those occurrences or happenstance meetings are actually facilitated by spirit for us, but we're actually part of that ask? And what I mean by that is, if there's something we need to work on, if there's an emotional component to our lives that we need to work on, or if there's a business component, let's say for this particular example, that we need to work on, we may be in our own homes and in our own lives, like ruminating over these things, so that we can actually make or subconsciously allow the energy around us to manifest itself in front of us in order to give ourselves the message that we need. It's really just like asking for help from spirit. What if we could actually promise ourselves we're going to notice what it is we're ruminating over, and therefore what is it that we're putting out there energetically that's going to be mirrored back to us? And it makes me think of a previous video that I did called Mirror Work. You should check that one out too. Because what this concept does is actually put us right in charge of our own lives, no matter what is happening around us. What if we are, and I write about this in the Stopping the Smell of Flowers series, I think it's in the 3rd book called The Space in Between. What if we're actually projectors, projecting the energy of our lives outwards in front of us, and the world around us is actually mirroring back to us and answering us? What if we are in charge of all of this energy, all of this creation, in co-creation with spirit? How exciting. Something to chew on. Follow me at stoppingthesmelltheflowers.com. Like this video if it gave you something interesting to think about or feel about. Share the video with a friend, subscribe, do what you can. The subscribers are rising. It's super cool to watch the analytics on this. And as always, my purpose is just to maybe bring a little bit of healing, bring a little bit of relief to our lives, because we deserve it. We're magnificent beings. stoppingthesmelltheflowers.com.